When I posted on social media during the peak of the IndiGo crisis, saying you'll be flying IndiGo in 3 to 4 days, it wasn't praise and it wasn't a prediction. It was a sardonic reminder of the brutal truth that no matter how angry Indians were about cancellations, airport chaos, and ruined travel plans, they would still have to get on with their lives. And when they did, there would be only one realistic option on the table: IndiGo, because that is the size of the monopoly they enjoy. That is how little choice we actually have in India's airline market. The point I was making then is staring us in the face today. When IndiGo sneezes, India catches a cold. It's as simple as that. One airline going into crisis should not be capable of freezing an entire nation's travel grid. It should not be capable of inflicting economic damage that will soon be quantifiable. It should not be capable of disrupting thousands of lives and embarrassing India in front of the world. Remember, IndiGo is the world's 9th biggest airline. Yet it did. The government, through Civil Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu, told Parliament today that the crisis was due to an internal IndiGo issue. Fair enough. But that does not answer the real question that's on my mind, and I'm sure it's on your minds as well. Why did the Aviation Administration not see a crisis of this magnitude coming? How is it even possible that a sector so critical to India's economy and mobility has systems that cannot forecast or prevent a meltdown on the scale that we saw last week? That's actually scarier, in my view, than IndiGo's own folly. What the government did get right is that it is keen on a market with more players. But again, the question writes itself. Why is that dawning only now, after a crisis whose symptoms are literally born out of a monopoly? If IndiGo were the same size as some of the other airlines we have in our country, this crisis would not have been a fraction, perhaps, of this intensity. And perhaps it would not have happened at all. In aviation, size clearly matters, as do power and control. Like with all things in India now, we stand at the cusp of a delicious irony. We've groaned all our lives asking for the government to exit Air India and let private sector give the Sarkari carrier a makeover. That's happened. Now we're wondering why the government isn't imposing itself more on private airlines. So what now? How does the regulator ensure this never repeats? Clearly no safeguard worked this time. So what is the assurance that it will not happen again? Or are we simply expected to set aside our fears of lives getting derailed again and put our faith once more in the invisible healing forces of the free market? And the breaking news coming in now is that IndiGo has responded to the show cause notice that was issued to them 48 hours ago by India's civil aviation regulator, the DGCA. The DGCA has received IndiGo's reply to that show cause notice, where IndiGo has apologized for the large-scale flight cancellations over the last 1 week. It is a response that is signed by IndiGo's CEO and Chief Operations Officer. IndiGo has blamed multiple compounding factors for the unprecedented chaos that gripped civil aviation in the country over the last few days. IndiGo has sought more time for a root cause analysis. Tech glitches, weather, congestion have been cited as factors, and IndiGo says that the FDTL Phase 2 implementation did hit crew availability. This is the rest for flying crews. IndiGo says it has rebooted its network with mass cancellations on the 5th of December. The airline claims passenger care and refunds are all happening according to norms. I want to go across to Vishnu Shom, breaking the story first. Vishnu, difficult time for IndiGo. They've responded 48 hours later to that show cause notice that was issued to them. What stands out to you here?
Well, IndiGo were given 24 hours to reply. They did reply. It took a little bit more time than that, but they've sought 15 days further, citing government rules, and these rules do exist, giving them 15 days to respond to a show cause notice. But the essential points that the airline have said, accounting for what went wrong, was number one, minor technical glitches; number two, schedule changes linked to the start of the winter season; number three, adverse weather conditions; number four, increased congestion in the aviation system; and number five, implementation of an operation under the updated crew rostering rules, in other words, flight duty time limitation phase 2. Now, all of this we do know, But I think the larger question remains unanswered, that leading up to the month of December and knowing fully well that these were the guidelines which needed to be implemented, there should have been a situation where IndiGo was able to have enough pilots on board to ensure that this transition took place without the system and the network breaking down. As importantly, what about the government? What about the regulator or officers within the regulator who work with all the airlines? That's their job, to try and ensure that there is oversight for a situation. Why were they caught by surprise? Why was there no real-time monitoring of the exact pilot situation? So these aren't answers as yet. This is a request for more time, if you will, but perhaps we'll get to the bottom of this, because one way or the other, this is all about flight safety. This is not about anything but that, which is why it's critical for millions of passengers across the country.
All right, Vishnu, thanks very much for that critical update. IndiGo says it needs more time for a root cause analysis. Even though the root cause may be glaringly obvious to many, there could be other complexities at play, and IndiGo has sought time to provide and supply a more detailed answer to the civil aviation regulator. Here's what the civil aviation minister said in Parliament today.
We are not taking this situation easily. We are doing an inquiry, and we will take very, very strict action, not only for this situation, but also as an example. We will set an example for all the airlines. If there is any miscompliance, any non-compliance or non-adherence for any single person, any entity or any organization or any operator functioning in this civil aviation, we will take very, very strict action so that we set an example in the industry.
Now, the good news right now for passengers is that the worst of this crisis is over and things are actually steadily and visibly improving. And I want to show you how things are improving in numbers. On the 4th of December, 550 flights were cancelled by IndiGo. The next day was the worst, where over 1,000 plus, but it was more, 1,300 plus flights were actually cancelled. That was the day when the story became a truly screaming national headline, if you remember. On the 6th of December, 800 flights were cancelled, so things started becoming a little better. On the 7th, 650 were cancelled, and on the 8th of December, under 500 have been cancelled today. The IndiGo CEO says normal operations between the 10th and the 15th of December. So in a couple of days from now, things should steadily return to normal. So I've just shown you those numbers. Now, IndiGo is part of a virtual duopoly in this country. Just take a look at who basically governs the entire civil aviation market in India. IndiGo is the big monster, the big Hulk. They dominate 65% of the market share. Incredible monopoly. Air India is a distant second. Air India plus AI Express controls about 27% market share, which basically means combined over 90%, over 90% is with Air India plus IndiGo. IndiGo plus Air India is over 90%. Other airlines include Akasa Air, which is a tiny 5%, and SpiceJet is even smaller at just 2%. So 7% is with the other airlines. Over 90% is with just IndiGo and Air India, and IndiGo is about 3 times the size of Air India in terms of flights and operations. Now, the monopoly that IndiGo enjoys in India can be broken down in numbers as well. Like I said, 65% domestic market share, operates over 2,000 flights daily. It's closer to about 2,200 flights daily. Virtual monopoly on all small town routes. You'll see the most obscure sectors being flown only by IndiGo because it makes sense for them. Obviously, they've got the largest fleet, the 9th largest in the world as well. 3.8 lakh passengers are flown by IndiGo daily. In 2024, over 17 crore passengers were flown. It has a fleet of over 400 aircraft and still holds the record for placing orders for the largest number of aircraft in the world, comparable with some of the biggest airlines. It has a revenue of $9 billion at this time and is very, very profitable. The last reported profit was about $807 million net. So this is a strong, muscular airline that has been able to dominate the market in a very, very big way. Let's go to our experts tonight, because now, even as things start returning to normalcy, the big question on everyone's mind is, What stops this really from happening again? What are the safeguards and what needs to happen? Joining me live, Vijay Gopalan, former Chief Financial Officer of AirAsia India. Neha Lal is an aviation expert, entrepreneur, someone who's been in the aviation industry for many, many years. And Captain Anil Rao is General Secretary of the Airline Pilots Association of India. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for being with me. And a full disclosure and disclaimer, Vijay Gopalan is a schoolmate of mine, so we have a connection that goes back a long way. I've known Neha also for many, many years. Now, Vijay, starting it off with you, because I've seen your videos on social media that have gone super viral, where you've simplified and broken down what happened with IndiGo. We've talked about what happened. The question now is, what next? What stops this from happening again? We've heard from the aviation minister. We've just broken the news that IndiGo has responded to a show cause notice and said they need more time to do a root cause analysis. Give us your perspective, Vijay, on what next? What happens next?
Look, honestly, in a market where 92% is really governed by just two airlines, I don't think we have much of a choice but to play by the rules of the biggest player. It is a consumer-driven market. We don't have a choice but to go with what IndiGo says. So I'm not too very sure if we'll be able to take very, very stringent action on IndiGo, because the end sufferers are going to be the passengers. I think the changes have to be a lot more structural. We'll have to invite more participants into the industry. And I don't think there are going to be any quick fixes for a long-term solution in this shift.
Neha, same question to you. What happens next? What will IndiGo be doing right now? They've asked for more time to analyze what went wrong, but to the layperson like me, it seems kind of glaringly obvious what went wrong. What's taking so much time? What are they doing right now?
Hello everyone, and thank you for having me over. But I just want to tell you one thing. I think as IndiGo, as being the monopoly airline, as everybody knows, and they're doing extremely well, sometimes there are struggles and there are obstacles, but I think they are doing a wonderful job. Right now, at the moment, they have definitely pulled up their socks and they want to give the best, because they have been ruling Indian skies for a very long time at the moment. And I think IndiGo somewhere exudes diligent work, and they want to deliver the best to all our nation, all our country. Yes, there has been an obstacle, and they're right now working to give the best to all of us, and I'm assuring you they're going to be the best. And they'll make sure that this problem in future never emerges, and they're going to have a hellish time for all of us.
But once was bad enough is the point, Neha, because, one is wondering how many lives have been derailed, how much economic loss has happened. I'm guessing the economists will be calculating the economic cost of what we've seen happen over the last 10 to 11 days. Vijay, back to you for for a quick update on the question on most people's mind. Most people have a short memory. They will get back to flying, and when they do, they don't have a choice. They will have to fly IndiGo. They're cursing it today, but they will have to fly IndiGo tomorrow. There's no other choice. So the question on everybody's mind, Vijay, is what stops this, or what is the assurance this won't happen again?
See, I have a slightly differing view on this, Shiv. I completely agree with you. Some of the key routes, you don't have any other airlines flying. For instance, Chennai-Trichy, you have about 7 flights a day. It's only IndiGo. You don't have any other player. Chennai-Ahmedabad, 2 big cities being connected only by IndiGo, direct flights. You don't even have Air India flying in that route. So if you say no IndiGo, I mean, who else are you going to fly with? And I completely agree with you there. And your tweet was perfect. In 3-4 days, we will go back to IndiGo. And that's the truth. So I think the problem is much more deeper here. An airline, while I understand that IndiGo has been doing this, serving our country for the last 20 years, but look, I think they have been treading thin ice when it comes to handling customers, handling passengers in an effective manner. I've been in the industry. I was with AirAsia when IndiGo was really growing, and we were also trying to make a mark into the industry.
Yeah.
Some of their market practices were scary in terms of commercial, in terms of dropping the prices, in terms of edging out competition by the sheer size of it. So yeah, It's not a very it's not a very open and shut case where, saying that IndiGo will bounce back, they will do their best. I think structurally we need to wake up. This is definitely not healthy. Look, Shiv, also we can't be reactionary in a lot of cases. And this, I'm talking from a government perspective. Look at what happened in a rare earth case till about 6 months back when China suddenly pulled the plug and we realized that we were literally being held hostage by another economy. Now the government has woken up, and that's pretty much what's happening in aviation also now. Having realized that, okay, this is not structurally sustainable, they are going back and probably, but there needs to be structural changes, Shiv. This is definitely not sustainable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, the government in its statement today in Parliament said that they are keen on having more players in the market. One only wonders how that's going to happen. Captain Rao, the government says this was an internal issue of IndiGo. Basically to say that this is not an industry or a market issue, but an internally created issue by IndiGo. So one is wondering what that means for a passenger. Does that mean that the onus is entirely now on IndiGo and the government doesn't need to do anything?
Yeah, hello. If you see that the DGCA has made a panel of people where they have asked for a review and investigate what the root causes might be. What led to this kind of a massive disruption in flights, and this was not at all expected, and it grew over every day, and this was sudden nature. I mean, that is what everybody came to know, but what was wrong, what went wrong, the software problem, you're talking about rostering problem, or you're talking about crew shortages, which probably is one of the things we can't buy, because I don't think so there is a crew shortage, not at all, because we have members from IndiGo as well who are not at all, they're saying that they don't have crew shortage because their flying is not as much as it used to be earlier. To substantiate that part of it, saying that it was a crew shortage, you can see that earlier, recently, the IndiGo had changed its contracts with the pilots. Earlier, they were getting a fixed pay, what you would call as 70 hours of pay. They had reduced it to 50 hours, and they had a lot of other contracts which were now reduced to only one contract, is because they were overstaffed. Now they have enough pilots, and they don't want to give you for 70 hours of fixed because you're not flying as much. So they reduce it to 50. Itself proves the point that they have enough pilots to fly more than what they had programmed or what they have planned. Now, coming to the point is why this kind of a massive disruption happened is very, very simple. One is implementation of the duty time limit, which was made almost 2 years back. If you see, had they implemented it the way it was supposed to be implemented, or it was made basically with the spirit of enhancing the flight safety. That's all. There is nothing more to it. It is only flight safety. It has nothing to do with pilot welfare or pilot rest or nothing. All these regulations are.
I want to explore precisely that for a moment, Neha. I want to bring you in because you've been in aircraft, you've been in cabins, you've seen what these safety issues really mean. These rules are not done for a random reason. And one is a little startled and one is a little alarmed that a big airline like IndiGo could say, I am not casting aspersions on the airline, but one is constrained to say that it is shocking that IndiGo, which controls 65% of the market, simply didn't act on these safety rules of mandatory rest for pilots.
Okay, I just want to inform everyone, the new FDTL was launched on 1st of November, right? They were doing quite well. The whole November, I think the flying for IndiGo was going absolutely fine. I think there was a time when management actually thought that they would like to increase their flights, right? At the same time, where they probably went wrong with their decision, right? But we need to also give them a benefit of doubt. Like sometimes till the time you don't take that leap for expansion or even to increase the flights, you won't learn. So I think maybe by management, they went on a back foot at this time. They went a little wrong, but as we are talking right now, as you very well said, by today, the flights cancellation has reduced now to 550. So I'm 100% sure they're going to bounce back. And trust me, IndiGo is an airline which diligently work for everyone, and they have been ruling for a very long time, and they do not want to give discomfort to anybody of us.
But does
Right?
it, you know,
And even the captains and the crew, they are working, from their heart.
no, I
and
want
it
to
is
I want
not-
to be very clear, because I see a lot of social media narrative about pilots, about how this is about the entitlement of pilots. That is patently not the case. This is a very much a management and leadership issue. But Vijay, when we talk about restructuring right now, I can't help wondering that for most of our lives we have wanted the government to get out of the civil aviation space. Now we're wondering why the government is not doing more in this space to regulate and structure things, and and basically hold the wooden ruler, as it were. Can you throw some light on that? Is it a kind of contradiction?
There are two aspects to it, and I'll try to keep it really brief here. The first aspect is, should government run the business? My answer is, government should not be running the business, but we need a national carrier. And the way to go about it, in my view, is government, for instance, has this investing arm called NIIF, National Infrastructure Investment Fund. Now, the mandate of that fund, which is government sponsored, is to invest in infra projects, and airline and aviation is part of infrastructure as part of the harmonized master list. Therefore, one way to do it is probably to invest in an airline company with 49%, leave it to professionals to run it, and get a counterbalancing private equity from some other fund. And, that can well be a national carrier where government has oversight, but they don't run it. But Shiv, I think fundamentally, we as a country are not a very aviation-friendly country. Yeah. Look at the number of companies that have folded. And if you ask that question as to why it has happened, if I were to give the top three reasons: one, the aviation fuel, which is 50% of the airline cost, is heavily taxed. As you know, in some states, the taxes are as high as 30-35%. I mean, that's not sustainable. Secondly, 75% of the payouts that is done by an airline company is denominated in dollar. So which means if the rupee to dollar is not stable, then it's going to be a nightmare to run a financially robust company. And that apart, then I think Captain Rao will be in a better position, or Neha will be in a better position to answer this in terms of what our training infrastructure is. Are we really geared to be able to turn out so many cabin crew and pilots on a regular basis? So structurally, we need to make some changes.
No, that's an amazing point. And also, zooming out just a little bit, because, to get out of the granular details of what the infrastructure costs are going to be, the flying public would also like to know that when the government says they are keen on more airlines being in the market and more competition and less of a duopoly or a monopoly, what does that mean, A? And what is stopping that from happening? Because we've got airlines. Neha has been associated for the longest time in her career with Jet Airways, which most people saw as one of the best run airlines, and we saw how that ended up. We've seen Vistara, we've seen, you have Akasa now, which is, like a small little minnow that is trying to make its mark. SpiceJet has dwindled down to an embarrassing 2% of the market. It used to be a dominant force in aviation. So one is wondering what these market forces are. How do you make it more equal, Captain Rao?
Yeah, talking about the business model and implementation of businesses and how the airline should be run, I'm sure Vijay has more experience in that. He's been a CFO. But coming down to the technicalities of implementation of rules, regulations, training standards, and training centers here, I can talk about that. Now, coming to a point, what I was saying is when an airline applies or for a schedule, there's summer schedule, there are winter schedules. You just don't get up in the morning and now say that, oh, I'm going to increase my flights by 10 flights to or 100 flights. They go in planning. Planning happens long before that schedule starts, like winter schedule. This planning happen, and they have to prove, the operator have to prove that they can do these number of operations with not only with the regulator, they have to prove with everybody, even with airport authority. Do they have parking space? Do they have any so many aircraft? Do they have crew? Do they have software? Do they have staff? So everything has to be given in proof to the regulator, that is DGCA. DGCA having inspected that and reviewed on it, then gives a timely approval for that operations to happen. So now coming to this point that it has happened suddenly is little difficult to buy. Is because this was
I agree.
already planned. And the plan has to happen with the rule and the regulation which has been imposed or implemented. The government and the court already had said that you implement it the way they gave a lot of leverage because the original rule was supposed to be only one rule which was supposed to become effective from 1st June 2024. But then it was removed, a revision 2 was come, and then it was given to the operators to come up with their own FDTL scheme or rest schemes, what are you talking about, duty scheme. That was challenged and went to the court. The pilot association went to the court and court said, okay, what do you do? They got them for a meeting and said, okay, now you implement it. Okay, you can't handle suddenly so much of duty changes. So I'll give you a chance to implement in 2 phases. Now the 2-phase implemented, the second phase was supposed to happen in 1st November. Now you cannot tell that you did not know about it. So you knew about it, your winter schedule was made on it, and you ran it for 1 month, and suddenly one day you come up and say, no, we have a crew rostering problem.
Interesting.
Not very clear in the statement what they are giving. So now, having said that, it is very evident that the operators were cleared for the operations which they had applied for. If you see, the other operators don't have a problem with it. Now, having said that, I'll just take 1 second here. They gave a special dispensation to IndiGo now. Now there are 2 rules. Now, Mike, our question is, how can anybody, as a citizen, as a law, can you have 2 different laws for 2 people? A law is a law and should be implemented in one go and one. So now, by giving dispensation, you have set a precedent that other operators also can come up with such kind of requests, and similar dispensations can be given on passenger inconvenience. The passenger would not have got to this situation. Have you had followed the rules in the beginning itself and programmed yourself and planned yourself not to cause inconvenience?
This goes to the very heart of what thankfully even the civil aviation minister said today, which is about monopolies and how certain things become a company feels it can take certain decisions, it can choose which instructions or advisories to follow and which ones to perhaps ignore. These are very dangerous things in something as sensitive to the economy as civil aviation. But Neha, just to zoom out again, because those are very important points that have been raised by both Vijay and Captain Rao. But on a kind of broader level, as I bring to this discussion to a close, and I'll end with you, Vijay. But Neha, to you first. Do you sometimes hope, that a Jet Airways could come back, or one of those airlines could come back, or we could go back to a time when, there was genuinely a choice?
Which touched everybody's heart. It was, accessible from all over India, and it was for the people and by the people. And yes, if I would be happy if we have another Jet Airways coming up very soon. You never know. But yes, I wish it happens. And let's see, you never know. Never say never.
The Indian aviation market, and I'll end with you, Vijay, is like a sort of graveyard of airlines. There are so many airlines that have come and valiantly tried to create a footprint and failed. And this is a difficult business. One still sees those rusting Jet Airways aircraft parked. It's such a tragic sight. This is a business with small margins, but obviously with potentially large profits to be made. So still the attempters still try to enter the market and do it. You've led one airline that came in as well. So what is your view on this? Do you think this particular crisis will spawn a scenario where we'll have more choice, where we'll have more airlines?
Unless there are the structural changes that we spoke about a while back, Shiv, unless any of those things are happening, I don't see any investor coming in at this point in time. As you very rightly said, it's a graveyard. I mean, why would anybody want to come in and challenge a giant like IndiGo? Make the turbine fuels cheaper, give some solutions to make the cost structurally competitive. Because fundamentally, the mindset of a lot of us is that flying is a very elitist mode of transport, and therefore people should afford to pay. No, that's not the case. Aviation should be accessible by the middle class. It should be accessible by everyone. So for that, unless the costs are competitive, the fares are not going to come down, and unless profit is fairly visible, investors are not going to come into this industry, Shiv, in my view.
India is not an aviation-friendly nation is my big takeaway from this discussion. We are going to keep the spotlight focused on IndiGo as well as the Civil Aviation Ministry as we continue to report on what the way out of this crisis really is. Vijay, Neha, Captain Rao, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time here on India Matters tonight. Thank you.